Okay, we are back, and I hope I have folks here who haven't missed too much. It would be useful maybe to just pop in the comments the last thing that you heard me say, so that I know that you are or that you have been with us. Sorry for all of the technical trouble. Munir is doing a fantastic job trying to resolve it in the background. I tell you what, one of the ways I can check to see whether you were listening and therefore the first couple of presentations, what was the percentage difference between our rote learners in the test and the story-led learners? We know that the story-led learners did better. I'm not going to make any secret of that now. Those who did better in this test were the storytelling learners. But what was the percentage difference? If you're able to tell me that, then I will know that you were listening to the earlier presentations. I've seen an answer. Salima, I think I've seen an answer. Were you there earlier, Salima? Right. Okay. Now I've got Nicoletta's guess as well, and Myra, Myra, is that how I pronounce it? Sorry. Yeah, quite a few different guesses. Right. Okay. I'm going to start again because clearly all of this technical issue has meant that I've dropped off a little bit. So don't worry if you were here. We're going to. I had hoped to tell you a story to demonstrate some of what we do and how it works. But I think it's more important, since we have lost a bit of time, that we focus on exactly how this is going to be useful for you. So just to very quickly let you know the results of this experiment. The background to this is that I have been storytelling for 20 years, most of which is in education. Epic Tales began as Snail Tales, and we have been doing this longer than any other organization in the UK. We have been training educators like you in using story-led learning for longer than anyone else. And that's why we were picked by the European Lifelong Learning Partnership to basically write their guidance on using storytelling in the classroom. And as part of that, we did an impact assessment to see just how much benefit this had. So in this impact assessment, one group of children were taken away and taught by rote using methods that I'm sure you will be familiar with, like learning from whiteboards, repetition, using flashcards, using worksheets. The other group were just told a story containing all the knowledge they needed to know. And when they went on to have a test, as you probably guessed by now, the storytelling group was the one who worked best. They came out and won the test, but the percentage difference, I know I've seen lots of guesses in the 70s and in the 80s, but the percentage difference was only 26% difference. Now, that might not sound very big, but there are two things you need to remember, especially you, Joseph, who asked us a question earlier about just why this is useful, why this is important. So here's the thing. Not only did the storytelling learners do better than the rote learners, but that 26% difference was actually the difference between a score of 58%, which is, most of the information. The rote learners had at least remembered the majority, and 84%. So the storytelling learners had remembered nearly everything. They were just a short mark away from remembering nearly everything. That's a big difference. But the other really important thing is that neither of these groups had been told that they were going to be given a test. Neither of them. But rote learning is about trying to remember, isn't it? That's what rote learning means. Rote learning means learning to learn. So those children in the rote group, they had actually been trying to remember the information, and they had remembered just over half of it. The storytelling learners, they hadn't been trying to remember anything. No one had told them that they needed to remember anything. And yet they were the group that remembered nearly everything. So this is a method that can help your learners to learn, which is effective, memorable, and enjoyable, all at the same time. I'm seeing some questions coming up now. Questions like, how can storytelling teach concepts of all disciplines? I love that question, Sonia. That's exactly what we are going to be talking about here. How can storytelling be used with primary classes? Stick around, Iones, because that is exactly what we are looking at here. And in fact, just before we lost the last link, I was asking you if there is any subject in particular that you would like to cover. Just please suggest it in the comments, and we'll see if we can do that before our time expires today. Let's say you are wanting to teach prime numbers, for example, the mathematical concept of prime numbers. The reason why I thought of that one is because that's one that we've actually done before. We had some teachers come to us and say, you know, we are exploring lots of mathematical concepts. One that our children are really struggling with is prime numbers. How can we help our children to grasp that? And the story that we encouraged them to use was a story about someone you may have heard of called Hercules. Hercules is that Greek demigod, the son of Zeus and a mortal woman. And at one stage in his story, he has to go down into the land of the dead to bring back the three-headed dog Cerberus. But the mythology doesn't actually tell us how he gets down. All the mythology tells us is that he goes to see some hermits, basically, some monks, some priests, and they give him the secret. So what is that secret? Well, all we had to do was say to the children in this class that the secret was being able to spot the prime doors. And what we did was we had Hercules listen to this instruction and go, what? Hercules isn't known for being particularly clever. He needed a lot of training before he could go on to become a hero. And one of his mentors was a centaur called Chiron. So Hercules went to see Chiron and asked for some advice on how to find the prime door. And Chiron, as part of the story, taught Hercules that a prime number is a number that has just two factors, one and itself. And after a little bit of a lesson, Hercules got what Chiron actually meant. And then as part of the storytelling, the teacher showed 3 doors to Hercules. These were the 3 doors, and each one had a number written on them. And in that moment, Hercules panicked. He knew that if he went through the wrong door, his body would instantly disintegrate, and he wouldn't be able to return from the underworld. He would just be gone. So Hercules panicked. He was looking at these. He was desperately trying to remember what Chiron had told him, but all of the information went out of his mind in that moment. Maybe the listeners could help. I mean, you're able to comment on this now, aren't you? I can see your comments. I can see that Mihaela, for example, has pointed out that Hercules is the Roman equivalent of Heracles. That's absolutely right, Mihaela, except we tend to use Hercules more just because that is a name that more children are familiar with here in the UK. So even if we are using the Greek names for Zeus, Hera, etc., we still use Hercules for the Greek hero. But since you have been listening, perhaps you can tell me what makes a prime number. What are the two factors that make up a prime number? Were you listening just like those children were? The two factors that make up a prime number are, there's a little bit of a delay before I get your comment, so I'm hoping that someone's already written it and I'm just waiting for it to pop up in the feed here at StreamYard. But like I say, if he got it wrong, then Hercules was going to go through a door that was instantly going to make his body evaporate. So, one in itself. Well done, Gabriella. The children were able to tell Hercules what he needed to do. And then, well, he was having to work out which of these had just those two factors, one and itself. And again, with help from the children, Hercules identified that the correct door was door number 13. And as soon, well done, Kumasaku. And as soon as he went through that door, he was presented with another run of doors, which had new prime numbers on. And by the time they had gone through all of those doors, those children had a thorough grasp of prime numbers because they'd actually been privy to someone else's lesson. They had seen Hercules learn from Chiron. And when it came down to it, they were able to help Hercules using the same method that they had heard from Chiron. So they didn't even know that they were learning. It was Hercules who was learning, but they ended up having to help him. So that's just one very, very quick example of just how this can help. I did see a comment. I'm just very quickly going to go back to it. Snezana, you put there that storytelling is a method to develop a fantasy and critical thinking. It can certainly help with both of those. But what I'm going to be sharing over the next few minutes is how we can use story-led learning in the classroom to teach literally anything. You've just heard it used to teach prime numbers. We can use this to teach anything. And if you have anything in particular you would like us to cover, do pop it in the comments. I might not have enough time to look at all of them, but let's see if there's somebody who can give us something else, maybe something that you struggle to engage your learners with, and we'll see if we can find a story. Basically, I'm offering you mentoring in real time here. Let's see if we can help you find a story to teach your learners something that they are really struggling with. While you are thinking about that, though, I am going to look at the triangle that we've got here, which explores how and why this works. And one corner of the triangle is the story. So with story, we have three letters, B and M and E. These are the core elements of story. What do they stand for? Every single story needs a B, an M, and an E. What do you think they stand for? While I wait for an answer for that to filter through, I'm just going to respond to a comment by Fozia, which says storytelling is the imagination of the teller. And Fozia, I think that is wrong. I'm very sorry, but that is wrong. When I told you that story of Hercules earlier, I didn't make it up. That was a story that had come from others in the past. Storytelling is all about the imagination of your listener. And this is the key power of storytelling. That means it's not really being used enough. There are so many educators, I think, who see what we storytellers do and think, I couldn't do that. I'm not an actor. I can't stand up and have the imagination to make this work. Please, Fozia, know that this is not about you needing to have a great imagination. It's not about you needing to have any great acting skills. We're going to come on very soon to the sorts of things that you do need when we get to this corner of the triangle. But it's not to do with your imagination at all. It's your listener's imagination. The moment you start telling a story, your listeners are creating it in their heads. When I mentioned Hercules earlier, for example, you had an idea for what Hercules was like. Some of you had a different idea. Some of you maybe thought of the Disney Hercules. Some of you maybe thought of the Arnold Schwarzenegger Hercules. There are lots of different ideas for Hercules, but all of those ideas weren't created by me. They were created by you. So that's a really important part of how storytelling works. So I've seen quite a few suggestions now for what this B and this M and this E can stand for. And quite a few of you have fallen into my trap. We teach our children so much in school, don't we? Just like Ariana has just said, that BME is beginning, middle, and end. Every single story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Well, no one told Shakespeare that. If you read any Shakespeare, you will see that quite often he doesn't have a beginning. He will usually start the story right in the middle of a conversation, or right in the middle of an argument, in the middle of a fight even. There are some of his stories where he shows it right in the middle of a storm. So no, stories do not need beginnings, middles, and ends. And there are actually lots of stories out there which don't have ends. Many films, if they are part of a trilogy, the film will come to an end, but that's not the end of the story, is it? It still feels like a satisfying conclusion, though, and that is because there is something else that this B and this M and this E stand for. So let's start looking at them, shall we? The first B, what B actually stands for, is a bad thing. Every single story needs to have something bad happen. And if you have read the guidance from the EU on how to use storytelling in the classroom, the title of that guidance was Something Bad Has to Happen. Precisely because of this. Think about it. There is not a single story in existence that has stood the test of time when nothing bad happens. If you can think of a story where nothing bad happens, then please do pop it in the chat. And if it is one that everybody agrees is a famous one that's been all around the world and has stood the test of time, then yes, go ahead and pop that in. So a few people have asked, do I mean conflict? It can be a conflict. Yep, you can have a conflict for your bad thing. Won't always be a conflict. It might be a volcano erupting. And if it's a volcano erupting, the people are likely not to be in conflict because they're all working together to try and escape. Yes, Roland, bad things create an expectation of resolution. Of course, that resolution doesn't always come how we might expect it to, if it's a tragedy in particular. But the important thing is that there is something bad going on. And this is part of the neuroscientific principle. During our Epic Educator course, we go through the process of looking exactly how and why this came to be. But to put it in as brief as possible for you, when we started out living in caves all those tens of thousands of years ago, we started paying attention to each other because we had important information to share, important information about survival. That's why the bad thing is such an important element of story. It actually engages this survival instinct in us to really engage with someone else's story. So we absolutely have to have that. The E, I'm going to skip M for a minute. I'm just going to have a look at E. Now I want you to think of this standing for empathy. And this is a really key point as well. We need to have a character in our story, a major character who we can empathize with, who we can identify with. And a really good example of this is in Sherlock Holmes. Do you know Sherlock Holmes? Have you heard of the Sherlock Holmes story? The world's best detective, according to the stories, he is the world's best detective. If you haven't heard of Sherlock, then please do let me know and I will give you another example. But this is really, really important because in Sherlock Holmes, in the stories, Sherlock is like a superhero. He is able to look at you and he knows what you had for breakfast. I mean, that is just superhuman, isn't it? Sherlock, if Sherlock was the main character in those stories wouldn't have been successful because we would have been reading those stories and thinking, well, that would never happen. No one could do that. No, I don't believe it. I'm not interested. Sherlock is the hero of that story, but he is not the main character. Who's the main character? If you do all know Sherlock, Aiton, then maybe you can just pop it in. Sabina's got there already. Sherlock was assisted by Dr. Watson. Watson is just like you and me. He's looking at Sherlock all the way through the story going, whoa, how did he do that? How the, what, you can't, that's amazing. And because Dr. Watson is in there in the story, behaving just like we would if we saw someone like Sherlock, we can identify with him. So empathy is absolutely key in stories. It helps us to engage. We need our characters in the story to really engage. Another really good example of this is if you have a character in your story who is so poor, they've never had any money, they've lost all of their family, and they're sleeping on the street. That kind of character would get a lot of sympathy, but it wouldn't get much empathy because very few of us here right now, I think, have been in that position. So we wouldn't necessarily remember a story like that or engage with it for very long because we can't empathize with the character, even if we can sympathize with them. But if a character comes along who is an educator like us, who sees that poor person down by the side of the street and who decides to pick them up and take them and help them get back on their feet, well, we can empathize with that. That's maybe something that we aspire to be. And that would make it an engaging story. And this brings us on to the final point, and that is meaning. Every single story actually has a point. You might tell a story just for fun. It can be fun to do that. But if you tell a story just for fun, it is not going to go down in the annals of history. Your listeners probably won't remember it the next time that you see them. The sorts of stories that get remembered and told again and again and again are the stories that have a real purpose. Think of every single folk tale. They all have something to teach us, whether it be don't talk to strangers, or whether it be how important it is to look after those around you, or how important it is to be generous instead of greedy. Again, these are all meanings for the story that are related to our survival. Back when we were living in caves, the stories that we were telling each other were about beasts that we had to avoid and where the best food was. They were all about overcoming these bad things. But nowadays, we have other things we need to survive, like our mental health. So here we have the reason why that meaning is important. It's important for our survival. So these are the key elements of story that makes stories engaging. If you have these three things, you are going to have an engaging story. Let's move on now to the actual telling. Because when we are telling a story, yes, we can have an engaging story, but we want to make sure that our listeners are actually engaging with it. And there are three things that we're going to talk about here, P and A and L. I hope you can see that okay. So the P stands for participation. And this is the most important element of any storytelling activity. The best storytelling sounds like a conversation. It absolutely does. If you are reciting a script to your learners, they are not going to engage in that as much as if you are just remembering a story off the top of your head and you're saying to them, oh, have you heard this story? Have you heard about Hercules? Can any of you tell me who Hercules is? And can any of you maybe describe Hercules? What sort of clothes would he be wearing, do you think? What sort of color shall those clothes be? Just again, going back to that comment that was made earlier about where the imagination comes from. The imagination is not yours, it's the imagination of your learners that's important. They are creating the story with you. Remember that the whole time. Again, this is rooted in the anthropology and the neuroscience. When we are actually asking our listeners to join in the story with us, of course they are engaged because they are investing their imagination in the storytelling. They're creating it themselves. In the example I gave you earlier, where Hercules was learning about prime numbers, one of the reasons the learners understood that lesson so quickly is because Hercules was inside them. They had created him. He was a part of them. So as Hercules was learning, they were learning. No, Lay, the webinar is not already over. We are going ahead with it right now because we had a bit of a delayed start due to some technical issues. So you can still take part. We are still live. Please do throw your comments and your questions in. I'm going to try desperately to make some time for questions later. So absolutely, we want to have some participation. Sometimes we get told that the best thing about being a storyteller is changing your voice. And you can do that. You can change your voice. But actually, if you do that, it can be more of a distraction than something engaging because your listeners will suddenly be looking at you and seeing you with a funny voice. You want to keep them in the world of the story, and you can do that using participation. Let's whiz on. Let's go on to the A. This is for anchors. Now, this is a bit more of an advanced storytelling concept, but the idea behind anchors is that we give our listeners something to look at, like this apple. And this apple, I don't know if you can see it here, but it might be green for some of you. It might be red for others. Some of you might be seeing a pink apple. Some of you might be seeing one of those weird apples that is red and green at the same time. The point is that we have here an anchor for our imaginations. Anyone who was to start listening to a story involving this apple would be able to imagine it there. If I were to hold up my hand and say, Snow White was given this apple, you wouldn't be able to believe me, would you? Because you can't see the space in my hand for an apple. That's why we make space for that apple. And if you look at it and if you believe it, that helps your young learners to invest their imagination in it too. So that's really, really important there, the anchors. We're only going to flip over that one because that is quite a big it's quite a big element. We don't really have time to cover it all right now. I'm seeing a few comments about puppets and the use of puppets in storytelling. That is a specific technique and it can be used. Same with pictures and songs, as Ionace has just mentioned. With all of these, remember the most important thing is participation. What is going to be best for engaging your learners and having them involved? A puppet show is quite different from storytelling because a puppet show is, again, like theatre. The puppets are scripted, they're dancing about. It's very difficult for you to actually engage with your listeners because you can't see them so easily. When I use puppets, which you can see me doing in some of the storytelling videos on our website, I always use them next to me and I'm still able to see the children, and the puppet is really there just to help learners understand who and what I'm talking about. So if I'm telling a story about a camel, for example, to really small children, they may not know what a camel is, what a camel looks like. So I will have a puppet camel. Again, very good question and comment made. Let's very quickly put in the last one. This is the language. And language is essential when we are telling because we need to make sure it is language that is going to attract our learners. And the fascinating thing about language is that it is musical. The words that we use can be attractive just in and of themselves. Particular rhythms of language, particular alliteration of language. Questions, for example, are a rhetorical device because they allow our listeners to feel a sense of power, while we ourselves make ourselves a little bit vulnerable. And that sense of power, that sense of respect that they then feel for themselves, again, this is all really powerful in the classroom. Speaking of classroom, let's have a look at our very last corner of the triangle here. We are looking at teaching, and our three letters here are RPM. This is what we need our teaching to be if it is going to be engaging teaching. A lot of science came out from the eastern part of the world a few years ago talking about relevance learning. We need our learning to be relevant to children. And if we're trying to teach them something like rocks, for example, or prime numbers, it can be quite hard to think, well, actually, how is this going to be relevant to our children? Why would they care? This is another neuroscientific principle again. For survival, we want information that is going to help us. We need it to be relevant to us. So we need to have some relevance learning. Stick with me and you'll see exactly how all of these come in together to help us get our relevance learning. The P is for purposeful. We have a podcast here at Epic Tales called Happily Ever Teaching, where educators like you come on and discuss how to use story-led learning. And this is the word I hear more than any other. They want purposeful writing. They want purposeful mathematics. That means that the children are using them to actually show something about their own lives. So if they are writing a letter, for example, that letter has an actual purpose. Maybe it's to convince the head teacher to give them an extra day's holiday, or maybe it's an invitation to get people to come to a party. So giving a purpose can really help motivate your learners. It's RPE, by the way, Sebastian, not APE, RP. RPM even, because the last one is M, and that one is motivation. Oh, actually, no, it's not. My apologies. I think I got a little bit thrown off by Sebastian's comment there, because when we're talking about these, we often have motivation as being the reasons why relevant and purposeful are important, because if you have relevant learning and purposeful learning, you are going to have motivated learners. But actually, the M stands for models. If you give your listeners, your learners, keen models, then that is really going to help them with their learning. If you can show that you have got the learning, then that's going to help them get the learning. But all of these are the corners that can make story-led learning the most powerful tool for for use in your classroom. So we talked earlier about relevance and how important this is. Well, remember, during a story, everything is created inside the minds of your learners. Like I was saying earlier to Fozia, who made the comment about where the imagination lies, it lies with your learners. If they are listening to a story, then they create it in their head. They put a lot of investment into that story. And that means it is going to be relevant to them. Yes, I will, Myra. Hold on. We'll talk a little bit more about it right now. So suddenly, if you've told a story about Hercules and they've created him in their heads, anything that happens to Hercules now is going to be relevant to your children, because he's in their head. He's a part of them. They care about him now. They've invested in him. And that means that when they have to learn the prime numbers to stop him from being disintegrated, going through the wrong door, well, there's your purpose. Suddenly they have a purpose for learning the prime numbers. It is to save Hercules. Gabriella has mentioned how motivation is an issue, but the reason why I scrubbed it out is because both of these are giving you that motivation. They care about Hercules because they made him. There's the relevance. And they can save him. There's the purpose. They can save him by learning that key mathematical principle of prime numbers. But what do we mean by models? Well, Hercules is that model. Hercules is now the one who is learning from Chiron what the prime numbers mean. And so your children's first example of prime numbers is a successful one. They see Hercules getting it. And because they have that model showing them how it's done, they develop a habit of success. I cannot emphasize that enough. A habit of success. When we are teaching children the first time, quite often they are not going to get it right because they've never done it before. So their first experience of a subject is failure. You know, you may say to them, which of these numbers is a prime number? And they might just guess and say 14. And you have to say, well, no. That means that their very first example is failure. But if you let Hercules be the one who makes all of the mistakes when Chiron is teaching him, and Hercules be the one who then uses his learning to get through the right door, your children suddenly see that now their first experience of prime numbers is getting it right. And they've done that because the story has attracted them. He's got to go down into the land of the dead in order to rescue a dog. I mean, that's a pretty bad thing. They can identify with him because he doesn't know what prime numbers are. They don't know what prime numbers are, and there's there's a whole meaning to the story which we won't go into because it's a big story. It's only like 1/12 of it that we're covering here. But they've got all of those elements that are bringing them into the story. You're telling it in a way that is working with them, using language that they understand, and this is giving you everything that you need for your corner of the triangle. Now, I am going to start taking a few of your questions on this. I think we started about 15 minutes, well, we started about half an hour late when we got onto the actual workings here. So I'm going to stick around for another 5-10 minutes to take a few questions and to respond to some of your comments. But before I do, let me very quickly let you know how you can work with us more to create your own story-led curriculum. That's what we do at Epic Tales. We help you to develop a story-led curriculum, finding stories like Hercules to teach things like prime numbers here. We've helped teachers to teach punctuation. We've helped teachers to teach the use of quotation marks, the science of rocks, the mathematical principles of number placement and fractions and decimals. All of these can be covered through story-led learning, and we can help you with that. Now, our next course in becoming an epic educator and using story-led learning is going to start in the new year. I've put up here the website that you need to go to if you want to jump on that course. I hope you can read that nice and clearly. Maybe Munir, if you can see it, you can pop it into the chat for everybody. Although it starts in the new year, I would very much encourage you to sign up now because we have a special offer at the moment that anybody who signs up before the end of this year will receive all of our back catalogue of storybooks absolutely free. So you have all of the books to use with the stories that we have used in our podcast, we use with all of our lesson plans. So it's a great way of getting that in advance. And I've also popped up here our special code for those of you who are here in the global forum right now. If you pop the word global forum, there's no space there, that's all one word. If you pop global forum in as the code, you will get £50 off the course. And you can also pay with Klarna, so you can spread those payments out however long you like and make it nice and cost effective for you. And we could be working together to help you design a curriculum that is going to help you use all of these principles, become a great storyteller, find great stories, and get relevant, purposeful, highly motivated learning going on in your classroom. So please do have a look at that. Yes, I can see Munir's now put it on the screen right down here somewhere. There it is. If you go to that website and use that code right there, you will be able to get access to actually it's probably not working like that, is it? Because I'm getting a mirror. It's probably there for you, isn't it? Do use that code to get some money off. That is going to be especially for those, and to be honest, it's especially for those of you who are here live right now or watching this very soon, because I think the code's only going to be active for the next 6 hours or so. So do please jump in and have a look at that soon. You don't have to use the code though. If you jump in and just sign up, you will get all of those free books as well. So please do take a look. While you are making a note of that, I'm going to go back and see if there are any questions, any comments I can respond to. Okay, so Sonia has put down, we have to teach children germination, photosynthesis, and environmental changes. Sonia, how old are the children you are talking about there? Because there are plenty of stories that we have used to help teachers with those subjects before, and it would be useful to know what sort of age your students are, so that I can give you a story you could go and have a look at right now. Let me see. Oh, Khadija has asked, I got last point of relevant, purposeful. What's the last one? Okay, so this one is models. It doesn't look very clear there, does it? I'll put it in the middle here for you. Okay, so that is models. And what that means is modeling for your children. So as a teacher, you would probably say this is that moment in the classroom where you say to your children, to use an adjective, I might do this. I might write down a story. Story is a noun, and I want to tell a fun story. So there's my adjective. You know, that's you modeling. You are showing your children how something is done. In the story-led learning world, though, the model actually becomes the character. So as the characters in the story are learning, I mean, we've done the adjective one as well. You know, we have characters who discover the importance of describing what they are seeing. They are then modeling for your children. And those are more effective models because they have created them in their head. That's what we were talking about earlier. And that means that they are super relevant. And anything that they do to help those characters through the story, that's going to be purposeful. Let's have a look and see whether I got an answer. 8 to 12 years. Okay, perfect. So, Sonia, there are plenty of folktales that involve farming. And one of my favorites is a story called The Farmer and the Boggart. I actually wrote this story. You can look for my telling of it on Amazon or in any bookshop. It's also on the Epic Tales website. If you were to actually sign up for our course, we would send you a copy of the book anyway, because it's one of the stories that we use there specifically to teach that that particular topic. So that is The Farmer and the Boggart, which is spelt like that. And this is a story where a farmer tricks a demon, because a boggart is basically some kind of demon, into allowing him to save a village and give the village all of the food that they need. So there is plenty of seed sowing and plants growing, which happens as part of that story. And you can talk about things like photosynthesis within that story. Another great one that we've used for photosynthesis actually is a story called Drip Drop Plop. That's another one that we would send you if you were to sign up for the course. It's actually a story more about the water cycle and the importance of water in various parts of the world. So that can be in growing things, but it can also be in photosynthesis and how the water is important in photosynthesis. So again, any story can help you with those. But I mean, folktale means a story from the people. So there are loads of farmers in folktales. And even if you don't find this one, even if you don't sign up for our course, have a look for folklore with any story involving a farmer. And the thing is, while you are in the story, even before you finish the story, if you involve your children in solving the farming problem that your farmer has, well, then that's going to be 100% relevant to them, because they have created that character. They've fallen in love with him. It's going to be purposeful for them. They're trying to help a character that they have created. And that farmer is going to be their model. I hope that has helped, Sonia. I've got a few more minutes, so I will very quickly... Rose has made the comment about Hans Christian Andersen's stories being good in language and art and reading. 100% with you there, Rose. Hans Christian Andersen has some wonderful story excuse me, some wonderful stories and some fantastic examples of just beautiful use of language. One of his stories is called Ollie Closeye, um, which is a character who fills our heads with dreams at night. It's a very poetic story. Another really beautiful story is the one about the little match girl whose matches help her to see the future after her death. And the story actually ends with her death. But again, these are really poetic stories that your kids will absolutely fall in love with. So yes, thank you for mentioning those. I am delighted to have been here working with you all today. I hope this has been useful. If any part of it isn't clear, then please do look for us online. I mean, another thing that you can do, let me see if I can pop it up here. Can you see that still? So if you go to a group on Facebook, that's the tag that you will need to find it on Facebook. The group is called Happily Ever Teaching. That is the group for our podcast for educators on story-led learning. You can go in there, you'll find me in there, you can ask questions in there. I do a live video in there every single week. So perhaps we can look at modeling more, because it looks like quite a few folks have asked about the modeling element and just exactly what that means. There's a corner of it right down here. There's an element of modeling in storytelling. So jump into our Facebook group, make a mention of it there when you go in so I don't forget, and we will make sure that we cover that. But obviously, if you sign up for our course, that is a very, very important element of it. So do please join us there. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Oh, that looked like a big one. Lots of folks sharing their appreciation. Thank you very much. Yes, Gloria has mentioned about teaching using your personal experience, and that is absolutely true, because that's where the relevance comes in, because they can see you, they can talk to you, and there's a lot of empathy in personal stories because we can see a bit of ourselves in all of each other. So really, really useful using stories from personal experience. Of course, it doesn't always help if you've got a particular subject that you need to teach your children, like prime numbers. I mean, maybe you'll be lucky if you've got a personal story that involves prime numbers and the time when they were massively useful to you, then that would be great. But if not, then, well, that's what the rich thousands of years of folklore is there for. Macario has just said connection between drama approach and storytelling. So drama, the dramatic approach, I presume what you mean there is where we actually get children to sort of take on characters and explore as if they're going into another world. Is that what you mean? That is a very popular approach, and one that is supported by a lot of this, actually, because that sort of approach is more storytelling than acting, if you think about it, because the key thing that storytelling has that you don't usually see in acting is participation. I mean, there's acting in the cinema. You don't participate with the cinema. If you go into the theatre, most of what you will see is acting, not participation. You know, if you were to participate, you would interrupt what is going on stage. So storytelling is all about participation, and the drama approach in classroom is actually a storytelling approach. So we are 100% behind that here at Epic Tales. There are a few flaws with it, though, the big one being that there can still be a possibility of a habit of failure. If children are in that position themselves right from the start, and they are expected to overcome a challenge, sometimes having to overcome that challenge for the very first time, they will fail, and that gets the habit of failure in them. The great thing about modeling, and what we were talking about earlier, is that their models succeed first time. So they get a habit of success, and you can then let them play act that. If you still want to adopt the drama approach, they can feel that success. And then when you go and give them a test where they have to do something similar to that, they are way more likely to succeed. I have to wrap up now, sadly. I don't know if you've been able to tell, but I've got a little bit of a cold coming as well. So I need to go and dose myself up with paracetamol and tablets, because for us storytellers, the voice is kind of important. So I need to go and have a look after that. But I hope to see many of you in the new year at the Epic Educators course. Please do make sure you use that code within the next, is it 6 hours? I think it's something like 6 hours, to make sure that you definitely get the discount, and also so that you get all of those books flying to you wherever you are in the world. I forgot to mention that. Those books will come to you no matter where you are in the world. Our printers are based everywhere, so you'll definitely get those books wherever you are. So you can absolutely sign up for them. Right now, though, it only really remains for me to say cheerio, and I hope to hear your story soon. So, cheerio, and I hope to hear your story soon.